Welcome to the Vanilla to Vixen podcast. This show contains adult content, so if you are under 18 or easily offended, please switch off now. Mr. and Mrs N are not qualified relationship counsellors. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Now the disclaimer is out of the way, sit back, relax, and enjoy our journey from Vanilla to Vixen.
Welcome to episode 68 of Vanilla to Vixen. We are your hosts, Mr. and Mrs N, and we're also known as...
The Naughty Couple.
Hello, Mrs N.
Hello, Mr. N.
This is episode 68.
I know, can you believe it?
We're almost there. And it's a really exciting episode, this is, because we are talking to two beautiful people. I feel all fanboy.
You've gone all gooey, haven't you?
I feel all fanboy because we're talking to two of our favourite podcasters.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're going to be interviewing them or they're going to be interviewing us. They are Mr. and Mrs Sno. This is the first ever transatlantic Vanilla to Vixen.
We've gone all international.
I know. They're in America.
They are.
I'm not going to say which part. You can listen to their show. Their show is called Scheduling Sin by SnoMilf, and they are Mr. and Mrs Sno, spelled S-N-O, no W. And they're just beautiful people. We're talking about friendships, and we're going to be talking about the swinging lifestyle, the naughty hobby, as we call it.
Exactly.
I'm really excited about this one.
Well, we were lucky enough to be invited to their podcast, weren't we?
I know, yeah. We went on their podcast, Scheduling Sin, quite a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
They've done about 16 episodes.
Yes.
At the time of this episode 68 of Vanilla to Vixen. So, yeah, we're talking to them, and they're just beautiful, beautiful people. Tina Von Teese has gone on their show.
Yeah.
So we've had a few people that have been on our show, have been on their show. And we just thought it'd be a lot of fun to do like a crossover. You know, I'll get them on and just talk about the differences as well between swinging over here in the UK and swinging in the USA.
Yeah.
And you never know. Podbean or perhaps Spotify or iTunes, they might get us all together. We might be on the next flicks. I don't know. I'm getting carried away. I'm getting all carried away. Talking of friendships, do you know the difference between men's friendships and women's friendships?
No.
You don't know the difference?
No.
Well, if a woman didn't come home one night, the next day she tells her husband she slept over at a friend's house, the man could call her 10 best friends and none of them would know about it. But on the other hand, if a man didn't come home one night, the next day he tells his wife that he'd slept over at a friend's house, and the woman called 10 of his best friends, 8 of them would confirm that he slept there, and 2 of them would claim that he was still there. We don't condone that kind of behaviour.
Not at all. Not at all.
We're all about good communication, and that's what we're going to be talking about with Mr. and Mrs Sno.
Now, just before, you need to calm down a little bit.
I do feel a little bit like Zebedee bouncing around.
You are, aren't you? You're a little bit Tigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just need to remind people that the next Vanilla to Vixen event is on Saturday the 11th of November.
It is Saturday the 11th of November, which is Remembrance Day here in the UK. So we thought we'd give it a nice kind of Remembrance Day flavour.
Yes.
With a red, white or blue. Or red, white and blue.
Whichever takes your fancy.
So we're asking all our guests. It's going to be at Liberty Elite, our favourite place, and it's going to be a party for couples and single ladies.
Yes.
And we're giving it a red, white and blue theme. So we're asking all guests to turn up in something red, white or blue.
Exactly. And that could be either your underwear or your top clothes, or
you could come in red with blue underwear underneath.
Yeah.
You could combine
whatever
it.
takes your fancy.
And, I'm just thinking about that.
Now, the guest list is still open, although it is filling up nicely.
It's getting quite full, actually.
It is. So don't dilly-dally.
No, we restrict the numbers now because we had January last year was called the Mosh Pit Party. Because there was too many people there. It was heaving. So we restrict the numbers, so get in early. You can contact us on Fab Swingers. We are Naughty Couple, spelled NAUGHTYCP1, or you can contact us via email, naughtycouple, NAUGHTYCP1 @yahoo.com. You do not need to be a hardened swinger to come to this party. If you're interested in the lifestyle, if you want to just know what it's all about, perhaps you just got that little bit of intrigue. You know, you and your wife are like interested in being voyeurs and just want to watch.
You just might want to just dip your toe.
Exactly. This is the party for you.
It is.
I'm not sure if there's any rooms left at Liberty Elite, because you can stay over at Liberty Elite. If not, there are very good hotels very close by. If you email us, we will tell you the location of the secret hotel where a lot of naughty hobbyists stay at, but we're not saying it on air. But yeah, it's a great sort of place to meet like-minded people.
It is, and it's a fabulous night, and it's really good fun.
There's no pressure on anyone. It's just great fun.
And you get to meet me and Mr. N.
And you might meet Delicious Debs.
And the lovely Roxy.
Yes, Roxy will be there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could meet all of them. Talking of Roxy, we'll be talking a little bit about Roxy. Eagle-eyed, or what's the kind of ear thing equivalent of eagle-eyed? I'm trying to think.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
A bat has amazing hearing, doesn't it? If you're bat-eared, our bat-eared listeners might sort of realise that Roxy's not been on the show for a few weeks.
Yes.
And we'll be telling you why. So it's been very exciting.
Yes.
And we'll tell you why Roxy's had an absence.
Yes.
And that's all quite exciting stuff. So we'll be talking about that maybe next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In the meantime...
Do we need to get the oars out? Have I got to get in the rowing boat to go across the pond?
Fire up Concord. I'm not bloody going in a dinghy. Who do you think I am?
I thought we could do a bit of a Robinson Crusoe thing.
No, it's too much like hard work. Get bloody Concord. I want to be like Bono. In Live Aid. Was it Bono that flew over there?
No, it was Phil Collins.
Oh, I've mucked that up now.
You did.
Never mind. I'm going to be Phil Collins. Get Concord out. Let's fire the plane up. Let's go transatlantic.
Woohoo!
And now joining us on Vanilla to Vixen, I am so excited.
This is like a world exclusive.
It is. This is so exciting. So it's our favourite podcasters all the way from the other side of the pond. The big pond.
The big pond.
The big pond.
Mr. and Mrs Sno.
Yay!
Oh, thank you.
We're so excited to be here.
So excited to be here. We
we're
love being
so
a part of this.
Glad to get you on
podcast.
here, my God. Honestly.
So yeah, you are definitely our favourite podcasters when we listen to, and it's funny because everybody we meet, well, not everybody, that sounds rather big-headed, but some people, actually one person we met about
wow, we went from everybody to some people to one. Wow.
I'll take it. Honestly, it's good.
One person we met about 6 months ago came up to us and went, "Oh, I'm so giddy meeting Mr. and Mrs. N," and that's how I feel now, meeting Mr. and Mrs. Sno.
Exactly. We were lucky enough that you invited us on to your podcast a while ago.
Yes.
And then we've been trying to arrange to get you on ours.
And life and everything else just gets in the way.
Kind of gets in the way.
Yeah.
We've finally managed to coordinate, haven't we?
Right. So, my first question to you is, here we go.
I'm so nervous right now.
I know. It's like I have to breathe.
How on earth did you get into this? What inspired you to suddenly start getting into the naughty hobby?
It was all Mr. Sno.
It usually is. It usually is.
Okay, so actually what it was, and I remember a lot of the detail of this.
Yeah, he would.
I do. Yeah, I do. So Mrs. Sno had started reading the 50 Shades of Grey books.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is obviously a while ago.
This was quite a while ago. And until up to this point, I don't even know. I'm not even sure. Okay. Up to this point, the most that we had done from a hobby perspective at all is I had asked her a number of times during play to tell me about previous experiences that she had.
He was very interested in wanting to hear about me with like my previous boyfriends or whatever.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to and at the time I really didn't understand why he wanted this, but he wanted excruciating detail. And then I realized,
and it started off with, hey, what worked?
but it was very clear he was getting very excited hearing about these things.
Yeah, and my phrase back then was the truer the better.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our beginning interest in some of these things. But
and I think we had kind of from the books, we'd obviously slowly thought about kink or talked about it. And I think maybe we did some blindfold play, which looking back
on it, we did some very amateur
stuff. But
it was not impressive.
No.
But I will say that period of time when you were reading those books was an excellent period of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's pretty stoked.
I'm assuming what we're meaning by that is that, it kind of got you a little hot under the collar.
Yeah, I think he was pretty excited that I was pretty horned up.
Interestingly, your book had the same effect.
It did.
Your
book when I started. Yes. Because he would be like, "Well, what happened today with Mrs. N?"
Oh yeah.
And I would tell him, and then they would just be over.
So thank you for that.
No,
that
you're very welcome.
She was reading these books, and I'm not sure exactly how I connected these dots, but I found a club on the internet that was in a nearby town. Right. And I remember calling her while I was at work, away on a business trip. And I called her, and I can even remember where I was pacing on the sidewalk having this conversation with you. But I called and I said, hey, I found this club, and here's what it is. I don't know anything about it. And I couched it as, do you want to try it? Do you want to go? And with the caveat that we have no idea what this is like. We don't know what we're getting into.
And we had no concept of what the lifestyle or swingers were. I didn't, in my head, connect the dots that this club was a quote-unquote swinger club as much as it was just an open...
Yeah, we didn't know.
Just a very open place for sexual exploration.
Yeah, and we didn't know. And the vibe was, we both agreed to this. We'll go. Yeah. And if it's a place that we don't want to be for whatever reason, we will have a good laugh and we'll go to dinner, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah.
I suppose to start off with, I think that's probably a good way of looking at it, because obviously, we talk very much about when you go to places like clubs and things that you don't go with any expectations. Right. But we remember obviously the first time we went to a club, and oh my goodness, we were so scared.
I suppose that's one question as well I would love to ask, and I'm sure probably our listeners would be interested, is how different is it over there compared to over here?
Yeah. Well, what I can tell you, having listened to your show a lot, I told you earlier, you guys are one of the only other lifestyle podcasts or hobby podcasts that we listen to. And so it seems to me, not having been over there,
which will hopefully
we'll correct that problem.
Don't tease us. Don't tease us.
I get the impression that I have to say it this way. We haven't been to that many clubs, but what the club environment that we have been to is quite loud. With a dance floor and music and things like that. And so I get the impression that there's not as much conversational opportunity.
Yeah.
in the club environment here as what I perceive that you have there.
It depends. A Dark Desires night at Liberty Elite's pretty loud.
Well, and maybe I'm wrong about that, not having been in both places. But I did not. We had a hard time wouldn't you say? Like, we kind of had a hard time really talking with people in the club.
Yeah. It's not really a good place to meet people per se.
Which when you think about it, that is a place that you go to meet people.
Yeah.
So those clubs might want to question, perhaps.
Yeah, you know
Mr. Sno has joked that one thing in our lives we're going to own we're going to own a club.
That's everybody has their name already planned out. Everybody has their own swingers club name. I've got several.
Well, what's your name?
I'm kind of like, I suppose we've talked about this, haven't we? Vanilla To Vixen.
Yes.
The Golden Pineapple is another.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I don't know. I make them up daily.
Yeah.
So we, but here's the thing. One of the things for us that was different, and I have to couch it this way. When we went, we were not really contemplating other people.
No, that had never crossed our mind. It was very much they can do whatever they want. We'll watch, but it was very much just about the two of us.
Yeah, we vaguely chatted a little bit about what we might do with someone else or one thing or another, but
that was all fantasy talk at the time.
Yeah, it really wasn't. So I will have to say this. So what we were after had a lot more to do with she and I in a very sexual environment, doing our own thing together, which is even more advanced than it was the first time we went, because we had no idea what to expect. And I will tell you that having no hobby insight, which we did not, we knew nothing about any of this, and we went to a club, and I'm telling you that around midnight it got very interesting.
Okay.
Right. You need to elaborate on that.
Well, we laughed because after we left the club at 2 a.m, and I looked at her and I think I said something along the lines of, I can't believe I've reached a point where I see people naked and playing, and it doesn't really get my attention. There's just been so much of it that it's just.
Did it initially not turn you on like you thought it would, or what was going through your mind? What were you feeling, or?
Well, I think what I mean by that is just that club in particular. It was everywhere.
Oh, okay.
There were people everywhere.
I mean, we were not offended by that in any way.
No, it's just that we had reached a saturation point that it's like, oh, look, there's more people having sex.
There's people having sex, and they're doing this, and there's this naked person, and there's this person eating asshole. And it's just like, whoa.
what is happening?
Yeah. We've done
that. We had a phenomenal time that first time.
We did.
Yeah, we've done exactly the same thing where we've done a whole weekend, and by the end of it, it was actually more erotic to see people with their clothes on.
little imagination, actually.
So what is interesting, and this may be fast forwarding some, but in our story, we started out with the sex.
Yeah.
The hobby for us started out purely as play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really between us, I mean, we weren't looking for other people. We weren't specifically looking for that. And over a significant amount of time, it has morphed so much into the community and getting to know people. We really didn't even know that part of it existed.
Well, we really love your take on it when you talk about evolve and evolution and our experience and our just kind of our mindset about the lifestyle, the hobby, all the things that we do. It's very much evolved, so much so.
I think when you go into this, I think it would be very naive of somebody to believe that it won't change them, because I think it does change people. We see it all the time, hopefully always for the better, but I'm sure some experiences are negative, and obviously people don't stay in the hobby, And I guess it's different if you're a couple, because if you're a couple, you experience it together. But sometimes it's quite interesting watching single people go into it. And then they'll sometimes kind of wander off into relationships, won't they? And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely didn't have that thought when we went into it. You know, like if you had told me that this was really going to change us or change our mindset or make us closer or whatever, like I would just kind of be like, what are you talking about? We're already super close.
Yeah,
and
no,
looking
I get
back,
that.
it's like, wow.
Yeah, I get that, because obviously when me and Mr. N, decided to sort of go on that journey, and it was the same, because you feel already that you're as strong as you can possibly be.
Right.
And so it's a bit of a shock to think that you could possibly love somebody more than you already do.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It was like that came as a bit of a shock, to us as well.
Well, and we always joke that like we have really good sex, and then again looking back, and you're like, wow, we didn't even begin to engage in like just the amount of sexual energy and exploration and like. You know what it is? It's we had never really engaged our brains as much in our sex life than we did when we really engaged in here.
Yeah.
Yes, that is massively true.
Do you know what I mean? Like
when we first started in that club environment and in the hobby, I would describe it as very superficial.
Yeah.
It was very. We were going to this environment as something fun to do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. We didn't see it as a culture. We didn't see it as a community. We just saw it as something fun to do. And learning that there is a culture to this and there is a community to this. And that it started out as, like I say, it started out very superficial, but it has grown to a depth that I never expected.
Right.
I guess the old saying is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so, like you say, when you go into it, people go into it for different reasons. Obviously, it's always really the sexual sort of images and ideas that people have is the reason they go into it, because that's primarily sort of what it's about. But I guess what you don't expect to get is the friendships.
It's not why you stay necessarily,
exactly.
but it's why you get there.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. And I think because it's normally perceived in a way that it's just all about sex.
Right.
You're absolutely right. It's not until you start sort of dabbling in the hobby that you start to realise that it's so much more than that.
Right.
And I think this is what's lovely about, your podcast and our podcast, is that that's the message that we're sort of getting out to people, that it isn't what you think it is. It's
right.
So much more.
So much more.
Yeah.
I mean, and naively, and I would have said the same thing a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I'd be like, well, that's not something that we want to engage in. But as we have evolved and we have continued to have the conversations that we've had, and we've listened to your podcast and just had experiences, like it's just been such an amazing journey. It's been so much fun.
So after that first trip to the club, did you kind of sit down and have a conversation and sort of say to yourselves, okay, well, we've kind of dipped our toe. This is the way we kind of want to go? Or did you just...
I mean, yes and no. I mean, we definitely had a lot of conversations following that. And I think it was very much looking back on, we almost used it for our own sexual pleasure. You know what I mean? Like thinking about, remember when we did this, and remember when we saw this, and that kind of thing.
We had a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, I agree.
We that first club visit, that was years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was before.
It was
right after our.
It was about 7 years ago.
Yeah,
it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that club visit happened, and then the next one was spaced out by several months at least, and then again after that, and then we didn't actually participate in clubs or anything for a few years while the kids were really young, and so like she said, we were kind of feeding off of those experiences, but we hadn't really come back to it. It really wasn't until this year, until really January or so.
Was it just this year? It feels like
this
it's been
year
so much longer.
that we really engaged with it.
Right. Well, I guess last year you had put us on SLS.
Yeah. Which is the American version of like Fab.
Oh, okay.
That was my that leads into my next question. So over here we have Fab Swingers.
Yeah.
Now, Fab Swingers kind of dominates the UK. It's quite an old, quite an old looking website. But in fairness, it's because it's the oldest social media within sort of that caters for the naughty hobby. Everybody's on it. It's like that Facebook. Everybody started on Facebook kind of thing. So everybody's still on Facebook,
right?
Because all their friends are. So Fab Swingers is still one of the biggest over here. What do you guys use over there? Do you have like a primary social media for swingers, or is it a mixture of different apps and things?
I know there's SLS, which is
SLS is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
I'd probably say it's most comparable to Fab Swingers.
Yeah.
What I have noticed is that a lot of people, and I've kind of gotten the gist of the same sort of thing maybe about Fab Swingers, is that people often start out on SLS, and that's kind of where they get going. And then as they evolve and as they develop relationships and friendships and stuff, they depend on SLS less and less and less.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they migrate to more niche social media things like, for example, maybe your Discord.
Yeah.
Or FetLife or things like that. They maybe start in SLS and then they migrate out to whatever community they gravitate towards. But I agree. I think SLS is kind of the big one in our area. There's another couples that have really kind of started up to compete with them, but
are they SLS? Are they like countrywide for you guys, or is it? Because obviously your areas are a lot bigger than ours over here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they are.
You can filter it, I think, within like 100 miles or whatever.
Yeah. And it has those. It'll show you people within so many miles of where you are. And that
they also have the feature like if we were to go on vacation to a different city, we could put out like a hot date request or something, and it would do it based on that location. Yeah.
Well, so we've had a little bit of luck with that sort of a system, and we have had we've met a couple of people that way. It is like fishing in the ocean though. Because
we know that feeling.
It is, and it's so many things. For example, we just met a person who seems like a really interesting person, but they are close to 2 hours away.
Yeah.
Right.
And for us, we have kids and we are busy and all these things. And for us, we have learned that people that are much further than a 30-minute drive away, it almost doesn't work.
It doesn't happen. The meets never happen, really.
No.
Well, they don't happen. And one of the things we haven't encountered this, but I'm very sensitive to it. I don't want a person to meet with us and say, hey, I came all this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of puts
have
added pressure
to
doesn't it?
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand that.
Yeah. So like over here, obviously, the listeners know that we talk about Liberty Elite a lot. It's our favorite. It's one of our favorite clubs that we go to. And we tend to, because we kind of evolved from having home meets to then having club meets, and we actually found the club meets were probably easier. So
there's less pressure.
Yeah.
If you feel that the chemistry's not working in a club, you could just gently wander off and go, right, I'm just off to get a drink.
Well, and the fish are in a barrel. They're not in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Oh gosh. He's like the king of like combining really bad dad jokes.
He's in Mrs Sno. He's in good company with Mr M, don't you think?
Oh my gosh.
I'm a dad swinger.
I'm a dad swinger. Oh my god.
Do you know how I'm feeling right now? Do you know how I'm feeling? All of a sudden, this astrophysics and everybody's talking about the multiverse and there's infinite universes. I feel like you're us on the other side of the pond.
It's so funny you say that. I listen to this and a lot of the things, Mr. N, that you say, I sit there and most of the time I listen to you guys when I'm driving, and I'll sit there in my car and I'll be like, I love this guy.
He's like my spirit animal. Yeah.
Our dynamic is very, very similar to yours.
Right. And I would say the same thing about Mrs. N.
Yeah.
Like, when she and I obviously have talked, but also in listening to her and her experience and what she thinks about things and how she experiences them, I'm like, we're there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have to say that I love about your podcast, the SnoMilf podcast, is just how honest you are. you portray everything seemingly so accurate. If something hasn't really worked for you, you will say it. You don't sugarcoat it, and I think that's really important when you're portraying the lifestyle. And that's one of the things we did when we began the podcast, was we wanted to sort of say to people who were thinking about going into it or just looking at it, is it's not all swings and roundabouts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not all kittens and rainbows. It can't be.
And so what made you decide, okay, you enjoy doing the naughty hobby, you've had some great meets, what on earth just made you decide, okay, let's publicly say this, although it's not funny?
It was all Mr. Sno.
I don't know if you've caught on to that. I get blamed for a lot around here.
You're responsible for a lot. Mr. Sno and I, obviously, we talk all the time and we have very good communication, and we just have so much fun bantering back and forth with each other. And we just have fun. And there were a lot of times that we would talk about things and we would kind of make these jokes or kind of have these grand discussions about experiences. And we would and Mr. Sno would say, we need to record this. And it was kind of just a joke for a while, like, oh, well, we do our podcast, because we're middle-aged white people. So what else do? You do a podcast.
We joked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We joked about this for years.
For a while, yeah.
Not necessarily just about the hobby, but just in general. Because Mrs. Sno and
parenting and about all
Mrs.
kinds of
Sno
stuff.
and I just talk.
Yeah.
We went to this hotel takeover that we went to. It's in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a 4-hour drive for us. We did not turn the radio on in either direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we just talk.
Yeah.
We just talk. And I've never met a person that I'm so connected to.
Yeah.
And
That's beautiful.
It is.
we just talk.
It's just, it's such a, I almost want to say it's such a privilege to be in a relationship like that, because not everybody's relationship is that way. And I know that's how I feel about me and Mr. N. I feel incredibly lucky to have found my soulmate. I was in a marriage previously, and I have openly talked about it and how it broke down and everything. So, to cling on to him, which I do frequently, because it's like, I don't think I'll ever get this opportunity again to have that one person that just is my everything. And I get that feeling with you too. And it's just, I think unless you have that, I think it's very difficult for some people to appreciate. And I know that we've had people in our vanilla world that don't really get us. They don't understand us.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced that? If you obviously you're very, very close, and people go, well, what's the secret to your marriage?
Yeah, we don't take it for granted. We try not to. I mean, it's easy to at times.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you go out with your girlfriends and they're all bitching about their husbands, about whatever, and I just kind of like, it's never, it's never been work for us. It's never been hard. Have there been moments that have been more challenging that we've had to work through? Absolutely, because that's just every relationship. But I can honestly say there has never been a moment since I've been with him, even before we were married, that I thought, there's never a moment I don't want to not be with him, or say, I call him or tell him about what happened today. But it's never been hard work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just been natural.
Even when he says he wants to do these crazy podcasts about your sex life.
Because
she does it willingly. I don't, there's no duress.
Yeah. He's not really dragging me kicking and screaming. It's because
if you listen to the shows too, she's getting more into it. I'm just putting that out there.
I said the same thing about Mrs. N when we began doing anal.
Well, clearly he's going to want to take some notes from your book, because
Oh, I get that on Father's Day.
Yeah.
That's when he gets anal on Father's Day.
That's the best thing about
And he
Father's
says to me,
Day.
Father's Day is coming up.
I say
And
it
it's
all
like
year
December.
long. I say it all year long.
Oh, yeah. That's brilliant.
But it's just, I don't know. It's, you know what it is? I think, and we talked about this. It's hard to find people that have a relationship that just completely trust, 100% trust, can be vulnerable with their person. And we have that level of just respect.
I mean, your level of communication was obviously really good even before you entered this naughty hobby. But do you feel that it's enhanced it or given you a new depth of communication? Or do you look back and think, wow, we thought it was good communication before, but it's on another... How do you think it's changed your communication in any way?
I think yes and no. Yes, it has, but I think we're much more open to the idea of having conversations that are not easy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very true. And we've also learned how we process things.
Yeah.
Which we do. This is one thing we do. We do process things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I am a sort of information seeker.
Yes.
When we have something happen, if we have a difficult meetup or something like that.
This is even true in your life.
Yeah, I am the kind of person who I want to bounce that ball off of a lot of people. Right.
Like experts or people that know more. Yeah.
Yeah, people that are experienced, people that have been around, people that have done it before. Whereas Mrs. Sno is more internal in that she likes to have those conversations just with us.
Right.
And sometimes that I have to be very cognizant of that because she can be sometimes, I think, a little bit hurt. Yeah. If she feels as though, well, we've had this happen. Why are you talking about it with other people and not with me?
Right. Yeah.
And so, and that's not intentional by any stretch. I absolutely want to talk about it with her, but I just my personality is that I will also talk about it with other people. So from a communication standpoint, we've learned more about how we process things and how to best take care of each other as each other is doing that.
Ultimately learning about yourselves, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Absolutely.
And, one of the other sides of this too is, and we've talked about this on our show, there's one particular meetup that we had, and it was a threesome with another guy. And this other guy physically is taller, bigger, larger than me. And she did not hate that.
I like the way how you describe that.
And was it? It was okay.
Was this kind of like further on in your meets, or how many meets was?
No, this is one of our first.
Well, it was our first. It was post going to clubs and stuff. But it was really our first official
MFM. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I didn't have to wait long before we found a guy with bigger girth and bigger length than myself.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly that happens. You feel good about yourself until you don't. So this happened, and I will say we were, and to some extent this was dumb luck, but we were very, very lucky in our first meetup that the person we connected with was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was wonderful.
He's an excellent person. We're still friends with this person today.
That is so. That's just the same as us. That's so similar. It's quite spooky, really.
And I think on the end of that, and we've joked and laughed about it, but I think you actually learn then that your partner isn't with you for the physical attributes so much. There's something deeper.
It's just
I'm going to say apparently not.
No, but that's just one part of it. But your relationship as a couple, there's so many more elements to it.
But you can say that. You can say that to your partner, and it's something that I always say there's a big difference between reading something and actually learning something. And so you can say to your partner all the time, all the different things that you love about them, but until you actually experience something like your partner having sex with somebody, like you say, who's a tall, dark, handsome guy, well endowed, and then you actually realize sort of the depths that they love you, that's a very, very powerful thing.
Well, it is. And in this case, what happened was, I will admit, and we talked about it even that night, that it was difficult for me to know that clearly she loved it. She had a phenomenal experience. And I did too. I don't mean to suggest that I was in the corner crying, because that's definitely not the case. But I did walk away with feelings I did not expect. Right. I felt things like, well, geez, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't have this, I don't have that. And you start to kind of get self-conscious, like, oh, geez, she really loved that and I can't do it. And at first that was difficult. But through that communication, through talking, she was reassuring, and we came to this point where I was already there, but I was happy for her that she'd had such a great experience, and I was comfortable in that happiness because I knew that we were still very solid.
Yeah.
I remember Mr. N and I have had conversations where Mr. N said to me, I can't fuck you like that if I've been with another guy. And I've always replied with, but I don't want you to. That's not what I want from you.
Well, sex with another person and sex with your husband is just, they're not comparable.
Exactly.
Yeah. And despite that's true, you say that. And I would receive that as, I understand what you're saying, but it is still difficult on some level to watch the person that you love be pleasured in a way that you physically cannot produce.
Yeah, I mean,
that's something you have to grapple with a little
absolutely.
bit.
And I've gone through that myself, because my whole thing with Mr. N being with another woman was the thought of him being in somebody else's pussy when he couldn't be in mine because of my problem.
Right.
And that has been a hang up for me for a very, very long time, because it was like, well, she's then giving him something I can't.
But ultimately, see, I think you get to a stage where, although it's not you physically giving, doing the fucking or whatever, you are in a way giving your partner that experience with another person.
Right.
Absolutely. To me, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're supporting your person and having this experience.
Because it's not about the intimacy that you have in the relationship with your partner. It's just purely sexual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's different.
I have come around to this idea that I want my wife to have mind-blowing sex in her life.
And God love you for it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I think that might be the first time you've said that. I want my wife to have mind-blowing sex in her life, because let's face it, you only go around once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her having had that experience does not in any way take away from ours.
No,
Exactly.
absolutely not.
And you are part of that experience, because you're talking about it afterwards. You're sharing it with your partner.
Yeah.
So although the physical act is with somebody else, and I think this is where vanilla people, as we call them, the Muggle world, we call it the Muggle world. I don't think they get this. You'll often hear, oh, well, swinging is a license to cheat. And it's so far removed from that, because obviously cheating is something that you're not sharing with your partner. You're going off and you're doing something which could be conceived as a selfish act that you're doing for self-pleasure. But with swinging, you're sharing the most intimate sexual act with other people, and you're sharing that together. And that is the huge difference, isn't it?
Well, you are. And one thing I always point out in that context is that cheating, by definition, is breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Right? We have rules.
Right.
My wife and I are still capable, even though we are swingers, which I think that term's sort of hilarious. But
I hate that 70s. Word. I really hate that word.
I always think of like 1970 and shaggy
I
carpet.
know. Hobbyists, definitely.
We are frequent fuckers. So we are
#FF.
still, we are still capable of cheating on each other.
Sure.
I mean, despite our involvement in this lifestyle or this hobby and this community, we're still very well capable of doing that.
We've spoken to couples as well before where it can almost happen accidentally as well.
Right.
So, haven't we? Where we've been in a club and we've seen couples that, can get a little bit upset because somebody has kind of accidentally overstepped the mark. And that's something that they then have to go and work out with themselves, which is why we always, and we bang on about it week after week, good communication before you go off to a club or before you go for a meet, because it's so easy to overstep those boundaries, and it's obviously difficult to communicate once you're in a room with 4 or more people.
When your pants are off, you're not making decisions.
Exactly.
But also
you have those conversations with your pants on. So Mr. Snow, whose pants are currently off.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not wearing any pants, so I guess my decisions are highly questionable from here on out.
But I also think that could we talk about, obviously, after the event and everything and the debrief that you have. And I think the debrief is just as important as the communication before it happens, because sometimes when you're in the throw of things, it's not that easy to suddenly have a conversation. And sometimes I think people think, I can't say it. I feel uncomfortable saying it, but, something's upset me or I feel uncomfortable about something. You then need to have that debrief to let the other person know. It's so important. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get to a stage where you're both really comfortable with who you're playing with, how you're playing and all that.
And sometimes you need to figure out individually what you really think about things. Because I think when you have an initial thought, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how you feel per se. Sometimes you need some time to just think about it and really put it in context. And
it's important not to project. And I'm guilty of this, so I say this with experience. It is important not to project your own wants and desires on your partner.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
We see that so many times with messages we get. And one of the most common ones from single guys, not from single guys, but from guys who are on Fab Swingers, and they've got a single account, and they'll say, how do I get my wife into this?
Right.
Which is the most ridiculous question, because it's like,
what are you talking to me for?
Yeah, exactly. Don't ask me.
He's
ask
going to
your
talk
wife. And if your wife doesn't want to be in it, then she doesn't want to be in it. She's not on the same page as you. It's something that,
which I will acknowledge, for a person who is interested, that's a tough spot.
Yeah, incredible. And we've had real upsetting messages sort of over the past 12 months that we've got where the guy has really tried, that there's been sort of relationships where the guy said, look, my wife just isn't into sex. But then the wife has said, they can go off and do it as long as they don't know about it. And the guys are almost kind of breaking their hearts over that, because that just makes...
That's not what they want.
No.
Is it? They want to enjoy the experience with their partner.
Because if you're telling your partner you can go off and do it as long as I don't know about it, that's more or less saying that's rejection, isn't it? In a weird kind of way, that's a rejection for the guy, and that's very difficult.
I think if you're a couple and you want to be in the naughty hobby, you can't afford to be selfish. I think it's something that there is compromise there.
I think that's a very good point. I think if you are selfish to agree, it will come back and bite you on the arse later down in the line. You will often find that it will come back on you. It's like a karma, because it's such a selfless community.
One of the things I notice in a lot of the episodes that I've listened to Vanilla to Vixen, and this is something I can relate to very, very deeply myself, is Mrs. N had some difficulty with the idea of you, Mr. N, playing with another woman.
Yeah.
And this came up in a variety of the episodes, and it was clear that it was something that Mrs. N was grappling with, and at a deep level. And throughout, Mr. N, and I will commend you for this. Your position was very much, I don't care if it ever happens. I'm having so much fun. I'm here with you. I'm here with my person. Whether I play with another woman or not is inconsequential.
Yeah.
And I'm still so touched by that, in that you're here for all of the right reasons. You're here with your person.
Right.
You're respecting your person's feelings. You're not pushing. You're not encouraging. You're not teasing her about it. Mm-hmm. You're very upfront, and you're clearly having a great time, whether that happens or not. Although I understand now that has happened.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it was okay.
It was. Do you know what? The truth is that and I've not really talked about this on the podcast, so I'm going to share it with you guys. The truth is, as I went down, there's a corridor to the big playroom at Liberty Elite, and Mrs. N was literally forcing me. I'm not making this up. She was literally go off and get fucked.
God love you, Mrs.
My
N.
wife says that too, but that's not what she means.
You mean when your wife went to go off and get fucked, there wasn't a naked woman at the other side of the corridor?
Sadly not.
But
He's so it's just poor Mr. Snow. I tell you, he's so neglected.
But on the serious kind of thing, as I went down that corridor, there was a little voice in my head going, "Does she really mean this?
Yeah.
Will she be upset when I get back? Is she expecting me to not do it? You know, which is a really ridiculous.
You kind of thought that for a minute that I was probably testing you.
Yeah, which. And I mean, obviously, one thing you never do in this lifestyle is test your partner, because you both, you know, you're on a hide into nothing. You know, it will bite you both on the arse doing that. So I had this kind of like a wrestling match in my head. I knew she wasn't doing that, but still a little voice inside me was going, well, is she doing that? I 100% had an amazing time because of the people I was with, and it was with a couple. So that made me feel, rather than a single lady, I think because I was with a couple, it made me feel super secure, you know? Mm-hmm. And they're one of the most loving couples. They just absolutely adore each other. And then I kind of like had this mini ego trip as well, because the lady in question was really beautiful. And if I'd have seen her in a club, I'd have gone, no way is she in my league, you know?
You'd have been punching way above.
I was punching way above. I think.
Good on you, mate.
I think it was solely because I've got a podcast.
Listen, ride the coattails when you can.
Yeah,
That's just it. Look, you got to take the assets you have and work with them, baby.
Damn right. I'm not too proud. I don't even give a. But so. Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for the experience, but the other thing as well was I was so thankful to Mrs. N when I got back because of the experience. And that lifted my... I was in a place at the time when I wasn't feeling too great, and I've shared again, I share all this on the podcast, that... you know, I was going through a phase of, am I really getting hard? I'm watching all these other guys that are like super hard in the playroom, and I'm sure some of the little blue pills help, you know, the Viagra. But I was at that stage where I was like, am I getting hard enough? Am I getting hard long enough? And so when I actually did play with somebody else, that lifted my ego by about 5 or 6 steps. Mm-hmm. And the person that I've got to thank for that, apart from obviously the people that I played with, was Mrs. N, because I was aware that the trust she'd put in me, I knew what a huge step that was for her. And I came back down the corridor, having had sex with somebody. I came back down the corridor, loving my wife about 50 billion fold more than I did walking down the other way, which I didn't think was possible. I really didn't think that was possible. And even now, that's quite emotional to me, because that's a really personal thing. and probably why I've not shared it on the podcast up until with you guys. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. What was the... So that happened, and it was clearly an important thing, I think, for both of you.
Yeah.
What was that conversation like afterwards when you got home, maybe the next day? I mean, that had to be a pretty involved conversation.
It was right at the end of the night, I think, wasn't it,
Yeah.
Mrs. N? And I got back and Mrs. N just almost burst into tears. Well, she did. And I was like, oh, shit. So it was like...
Oh, gosh. I would have felt crushed in that moment.
Well, obviously...
That's not really what you want to come back to, is it?
My first thing was like, shit. My first question was, did you expect me to? And she was like, no. She was reassuring me immediately, even wiping the tears away. She was like, no, because she felt she had released so much baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was in a club of predominantly people who did full swap, and we have different nights at Liberty Elite. So sometimes there's a hot wife club where there's a lot of couples where just the wives play, but there's obviously a lot of nights where couples do full swap and everything else. So Mrs. N has constantly been in an environment where couples do full swap, and
Right.
I didn't know up to that point just what enormous baggage Mrs. M was carrying around. Just
Well, it sets a tone, right? And maybe in potential expectations. Sure.
Yeah.
and so we had a really sort of good talk about it, and it was a case.
It was
where
a very honest talk as well, which I think is important,
Yeah.
isn't it? So it was completely honest, and obviously, I did explain to Mr. N that the tears weren't because the fact that he'd gone off and played. I was honest that I didn't want to be there to watch it because I don't think I was ready for that. But it was more of a release thing, and I think it was important that we both said how it made us feel and literally went through it step by step.
closely followed by, and you won't be doing that every week.
Yeah, I did say that.
Don't get used to it, pal. It's Father's Day.
It's Father's Day.
Yeah, maybe.
No, but one thing we don't talk a lot about in the hobby is the idea of emotional risk.
Yeah.
In that moment when you said to him, okay, go ahead, you had decided to a certain level that you were ready for that.
Yeah.
But so much of this hobby, things that we do, we call it stretching. You're stretching into a thing you've never done before, a situation you've never done before, a play you've never done before. And you, as much as you can talk about it ahead of time, imagine it, fantasize about it, etc., you really don't know how you're going to feel about it until it's over.
Exactly.
It's
It's so
there.
true. It's so true. And in my head at the time, this had been building up for a few weeks. And there was a couple of times when we'd been at the club and I had that kind of feeling that, I think I would be okay. But then it was almost like, no, I'm not going to say anything just in case that's just a brief moment of me feeling all right, and then it's not going to feel okay.
You can't take it back once you've done that.
Once it's
Right,
done,
you
it's
don't want to
done.
put it out there until you mean
in
it.
fairness, it took quite a few weeks of me constantly having that feeling of, do you know what, I really do think I'll be okay. And I did, after I'd actually said to him, no, just go off, it's absolutely fine. I had to ask myself the question, are you really okay with this? To which I was able to answer, yeah, I am actually okay with it.
And I can understand for you, Mr. N, why that was very difficult. I think in your shoes, if Mrs. Sno was encouraging me to go do something that I knew was difficult for her,
It's hard to do it.
it's hard to do it.
And I almost,
Even if there is a beautiful woman on the other side.
but I also as well.
That makes it easier, though.
I was aware that Mrs. N wanted to offload this baggage, and
Well, I'd carried so much guilt for years.
so it was something we had talked about. You had kept part of it a little bit secret sometimes about how much it would build up with you. So it was a very difficult situation. It was one of those where, like I said, I walked down the corridor and I wasn't 100% sure. and credit to the people that I was playing with, because this might sound absolutely ridiculous, but they made me feel secure. You know,
yeah.
I think that was the other thing as well. The choice of people.
100%.
Well, they were people you both knew.
Yeah.
There were people we knew, although not really well, but there were people we knew, and more importantly, people we totally trusted.
Yeah,
sure. You know, throughout the whole thing, the wife was almost holding her husband's hand. So, to me, that was, you know, the strong emotional thing between them. And I was very much aware for the very first time, I was almost the single guy involved in it. And I was aware I was merely the sex toy. But because I'd been in that husband's role so many times before, I knew exactly what my role was. And it was just, you know, that sort of sex toy, and then giving them time to reconnect immediately afterwards. So I felt very comfortable in that position because I'd been in the other position for so many times.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I've got a question for you guys. So this is what I'm interested in. So obviously you were already in the hobby, and then you got to the stage where you decided you were going to go and do the podcast. And I know we've talked about it before, where being in the hobby gives you a level of confidence that you probably wouldn't have had before. How has doing the podcast affected that? Has it increased the confidence you guys have? Do you think that's even in your normal day-to-day life? Has it sort of made a difference to you in your normal life, as well as you know, interviewing people? And
I would say yes, it has definitely increased confidence and just you know, just our knowledge, obviously. But we've just enjoyed the community part of it, and it's really given us an opportunity to get to know other people, but also just explore and have very open, non-judgmental conversations about things. So it's funny, we went to this hotel takeover a couple weeks ago, and there's is it Telegram? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's like a
messaging app.
It's a messaging app.
Yeah.
We have that here,
that a lot of people use to kind of get to know each other and have some connections prior to going to these hotel parties, which I think is the way to go, because sometimes it's a lot harder to connect when you're there. So to have those conversations and connections prior is good. And so we ended up we had some conversations with some people, and we made was a hotel themed, and we're not really
Halloween
costume
themed.
people by any means.
It was Halloween themed.
Yeah.
Did I say that? And so we, our little Halloween costumes, we had gotten these white baseball jerseys with red and black trim, and we had ironed on Mr. and Mrs. Sno on our baseball jerseys. And we were also, I was 6 and he was 9.
Yeah. So we were subtle. Very subtle.
Yeah. And
this was our first time ever, quote unquote, being Mr. and Mrs. Sno.
Really?
Yeah.
In any sort of a public way.
Right. Because we'd never really done that. And so we posted these pictures of our jerseys on Telegram, and we're like, come say hi to us and all this stuff. And I'm walking down, and mind you, I'm in this white jersey, pretty much open, with a nice little red lacy bra and little red panties, and, you know, just running around. And
I think Mr. N's suddenly gone really, really warm.
If you carry on, I'll be taking my pants off.
I'll send you pictures later.
This is pretty nice.
It was so good.
So I'm walking down the hall, and all of a sudden I hear Mrs. Sno. And this adorable woman just runs up to me, and she's also wearing something very red and lacy. And she's like, Mrs. Sno, I just love your podcast, and I love your voice is so sexy, and all, which I have never in my life been told my voice is sexy.
You
have an incredibly sexy voice.
Yeah.
Thank you. We would never have expected something like that.
No. And so you talk about confidence and kind of feeding a little bit of this ego, if you will.
Yeah.
It was really touching, but I will say what was really really amazing about it is we had, a handful, it wasn't a ton of people by any means, but a couple people come and talk about how they love our podcast. We're very relatable, and they really felt like they could relate to the things that we were talking about and saying. And honestly, and we talked about this, like, who's going to listen to us, right? Who the hell gives anything about what we have to say? But when you have people come up to you and just genuinely say, we really just enjoy the conversations that you're having. We really relate to some of the things that you've experienced and some of the things that you're talking about. It really is it just gives you the warm and fuzzies.
It's very touching.
It's very touching because, we started this because we have fun and we enjoy talking and we just, we enjoy bantering. And so to think that it's meaningful to other people is really just... It's very touching, and it's not what we intended it to be per se.
You are hugely popular over here.
Yeah,
I've got
incredibly
to say,
popular.
You're hugely popular over here, so you have international pulling power.
So I told him, I said, anytime we go to any event, we have to be Mr. and Mrs. Sno.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The most kind compliment that we have received from anyone, and we've gotten variations on this, is that your podcast has helped our communication.
Wow.
We have had people say, and this, I just cannot tell you how much I love this. We've had people say, we pause you a lot.
Right.
And what they mean by that is they're listening to whatever it is we're talking about, and they hit the pause button and they talk to each other.
Yeah.
And that is such an extraordinary win.
Isn't it?
To be able to have facilitated that for someone, even if it's 2 people. I don't care if 200 million people listen to us. I really don't care. The fact that those 2 people did and it helped them was shockingly meaningful to us. And I will also say, when we first started this, the podcast is kind of an internet thing, right? I mean, and the internet in general is a wildly toxic, mean place. Yeah. I was very nervous because you know this. I mean, you guys do this. I mean, you're on episode. By the way, sidebar. I'm a little frustrated that we're episode 68 and not 69.
Yes,
but
sorry.
Okay. So I noticed that when we started this. But anyway,
you can be 68 and we'll owe you one.
I'll take it. You can make good on that in February of 2024. But I'll hold you to it. But you put yourself out there, and you put it all out there for whoever downloads it to see, and reviews and things like that come in, and I will say we have not had a single person
be nasty.
No, we've had no one be mean to us or say you guys are terrible. Shockingly, I did not expect that. And frankly, when we first started, I had this sort of feeling that if we get a lot of negativity, we're just going to punch out because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I think when anybody puts themselves out there, I think on the internet, I think people can spot fakes very easily. And so I don't think it's any accident that you haven't had a lot of negativity because your podcast comes across so genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that is the reason.
Yeah, because people can relate to you because it's going to sound weird, but because you're normal. Do you know what I mean? In a weird way, but you are normal.
I hate that word.
I know. I know. But what you can understand what I'm trying to get across.
Which is real.
It's just you're real. That's the
real,
better word.
Authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is, and that's not always easy to do for people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say this: if you meet us anywhere, you'll find that we are exactly what we sound like.
Yeah.
100%. Like there's really no
you're like Ron Steele.
I don't have the bandwidth to be somebody else.
No, but I will say this: when we were getting ready to go to this, and we had these jerseys made up and everything, and we're in our bedroom ironing these letters on,
right after the kids go to bed and the door's locked,
and everyone else is like got these extraordinarily intricate and awesome Halloween costumes, and we feel like we're half-assing it, but this is what we're doing. So she looks at me and she smiles, and she gets this smile on her face, and she says to me, "I have an alter ego."
Oh yeah.
And it was like, yeah, you do, because Mrs. Sno is a vixen,
and
full on unmitigated vixen.
The best thing is, for anybody listening to this, you don't have to have a podcast to have that alter ego.
You just need a jersey.
Yeah.
You need a jersey.
The minute anybody walks into a takeover hotel or a club or whatever, you can be other people. I think that's one of the addictive things about the lifestyle or the naughty hobby.
Yes, before you get told off.
Yeah.
I'll have to get the jar out.
It's truly... It is not inauthentic.
No.
Because you are still you.
Yeah.
You're just that part of you that doesn't come forward in Zoom meetings at work.
Yeah.
Right. I know.
It's just a different part of you that you just don't get to explore very often.
I have a question for Mrs. Sno, and funnily enough, it was something that me and Mr. M were talking about. I think it was today or yesterday. It might have been yesterday. When you're kind of out and about, just doing your normal, like going shopping or whatever, do you ever get those times when a guy will look at you just a little bit longer than probably he should have done, and you think to yourself, do you know?
If you only knew.
I know. It's like, have you seen something?
So that's funny. I think about that sometimes with my voice more than my body because, we had a Pornhub account and we were posting content there, and we have since taken that down. And there's a running conversation. There's a running joke. I don't think it's a joke really on the Discord about #free the thumb drive.
Yeah, because all this content still exists.
It still exists.
It's just not available.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so that's a running joke in our group.
And
it's free the thumb drive.
people that have listened to the first couple episodes, I mention, watch our naughty videos, right? Which obviously people that are starting to hear it, they hear this, they get excited, they go, then they can't find it. And so apparently
it's a sore subject actually for a lot of our listeners.
Giveth and SnoMilf taketh away. And so I guess I haven't thought about it in the sense that they have seen me, but maybe more that they've hear me.
Yeah, I get that.
Maybe my voice or something.
Yeah, because obviously my giggle gives me away quite a lot, and I am a bit of a giggler anyway. And there are times when I've been giggling, maybe even at work, and then I suddenly thought to myself, I should stop doing that just in case somebody recognizes it.
But I feel like it's a big enough. I mean, we're in a big enough country, if you will, that I don't know. The idea of someone like our neighbor listening versus someone across the country who I will never see or interact with. So I haven't necessarily had that thought, but now I'm going to.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to shake my ass just a little bit more.
Thank you for that.
You're most welcome. I had a funny conversation. This is something that happened about a week or so ago, and it kind of relates back to me saying, there's the confidence of being in the hobby and the podcast kind of filtered into your normal everyday life. And I was at work and my boss happened to say to me, I've noticed that you're a lot calmer than you used to be. You kind of just take things in your stride. You're very kind of relaxed and everything. And he says, I really want to know what the secret to it is.
Oh, no, you really don't.
And it was one of those moments when it's like,
it's bukkake.
I'm not sure I can actually divulge in that information. But I just went, I don't really know.
If I tell you, you're going to send me to HR.
Exactly.
Well, and one thing I will say on that note is I have enjoyed watching how the hobby and to some extent the podcast has massively improved the confidence of Mrs. Sno.
Yeah.
Mrs. Sno has had so much wonderful validation through this that I feel like women in general, I mean, it's true, I think, also for men, but women have a tough time of it. I think women are held to certain standards that are completely ridiculous. Yeah. And it's not uncommon to kind of have this feeling like, well, why would anybody look at me like that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And this hobby has gone a long way.
Well, and the Discord as well, and I think I made this statement in one of our last podcasts about even, 7-8 months ago, Mr. Sno would take a picture of me or whatever, and I would be like, ugh,
burn it.
It's terrible. Yeah. Like, oh no, it's a terrible angle, or who wants to see that, and now I feel like the things that I will post on the Discord, like I would never have thought to post those 7-8 months ago. Yeah. And now I just snap a photo and I don't think twice about it almost. And I just put it out there and just kind of the amount of love and support you get. And just, it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's an environment where you can be a real person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can be a normal, average, real person who may or may not have skipped the gym this morning.
Well, right. With rolls and
you can be who you are. And we talked about this here recently where, the group of people, they're celebrating you for you. They're not celebrating you for this particular shape or that particular shape. Yeah. They're celebrating you as a person.
It's like they see deeper than just the outer shell, don't they?
Absolutely. I think one thing worrying about society as a whole, and I'm talking about the Muggle world here as well, is you say something really important there, that when you snap the photo and you don't care about the roles and things. I'm talking about myself when I do that.
Yeah.
But in today's society, I mean, we've got phones now. Over here in the UK, Google have just released a Google Pixel phone. And
I have a Pixel, yeah.
The main advertising and the main sales feature of the camera on this phone is that you can sort of circle around things that you want taken out the photo.
Yeah.
And you can do this, and you can put filters on it. What kind of message is that sending to our kids, that you can perfect your alter ego online? You can make everything perfect. Sooner or later, that's going to bite us all as a society on the arse, because life, you can't scrub things out of life. You can't perfect life. You can't get rid of the roles in life.
Right.
But we could do this on the internet. And it kind of makes you wonder where we're headed as a society when we're selling, that you can perfect your online alter ego.
Well, I think it just reinforces the statement that Mr. Sno made earlier about, like, it's this unattainable image.
Yeah.
And we can't be content or even comfortable in our own skin. We have to change it. Yeah. We have to put a filter on it. We have to erase this. We have to tweak this.
Mm.
We had at our hotel takeover, we did a group recording similar to the one that you guys did, where it was a bunch of swingers in a hotel room, which is still one of my favorite episodes. We did almost exactly the same thing. And in that particular group, now one thing that was different, in that particular group, we posted a sign on the window of the hotel room that we're going to be recording live at 11 p.m. And we didn't know if anybody would show up. In fact, we kind of, I don't know, 10:30 was rolling around, and I was kind of starting to think, well, maybe we're not going to do this at all. And at right around 11 o'clock, I looked out the door, and there's all these people standing there. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And suddenly I had this massive amount of stage fright.
His pants still come on.
You know what? I'm a power through it kind of guy. So we
such a trooper.
Okay, well, I guess we're doing this. So we invited. It was
like 12 people.
Yeah, 12 to 15 people, something like that we had never met. We had not spoken to. We knew nothing about these people. We said, come on in. And everybody came in and piled onto the couch and wherever else they could find. And for around an hour, we had a phenomenal conversation that was fun. It was funny. It was very open.
But it was very sincere.
Very sincere with people we did not know.
Yeah.
And I have never had an experience like that in any other community outside of this one.
Yeah. I think that is what makes the people that are in the hobby so special.
Yeah.
Because you can't get that anywhere else. And that almost, for me, is a bigger draw than having sex with somebody.
Yeah. It's funny, I go back to that, sex brought you in, but sex doesn't keep you.
Well,
yeah.
So sex has actually become my lowest hobby priority.
Yeah, that's so you hear that so many times.
Yeah,
and I think one thing, as I say, obviously we've been doing this now, where our life has changed. That now more people know about us than don't know about us, and the awkward thing for us being in that position is that the very few that don't know, some of them are still good friends that we just don't think probably, would accept it, kind of thing, or, we're not going to push it down people's throats unless they ask. If they ask, we'll tell them straight away. But I think one thing that we've noticed is when we sometimes have conversations, we're now at this point where we so want to just say, our experiences within the naughty hobby kind of help you in the real world. Yeah. And there's been times, haven't there, with both sort of Mrs N's friends and with a couple of my friends, where I wanted to say, we've experienced this, and communication's the key here, but you kind of can't tell them why you know that.
Well, I will say this, and I think, Mr. N, maybe you've echoed this comment in your podcast. The hobby has helped me appreciate diversity.
Yeah.
The hobby has helped me to have a better understanding of people that are very different than me.
I totally echo that. I sit here as a better person, and I've heard your podcast, and I've heard you say it, and I've sat there nodding my head because there's been situations that I've been in within the hobby. For instance, sitting in a room full of tea-girls, where I would have sat there a few years ago doing that, giggling like a schoolboy with immature, humour. But having been in the hobby, I've seen it and then gone, wow, what a safe place for all these individuals to be able to go and indulge in their thing, which I think probably for tea-girls sometimes it's more something that's part of them. It's almost...
It is more of a lifestyle for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 24/7, although obviously with a lot of them, they can't do it 24/7.
Well, right. I imagine there's more risk associated with them doing certain things in certain environments.
We've had people where we've had tea-girls use our SOS, our reach-out room. And where they've been threatened in the real world kind of thing. And it's just, that shouldn't be happening in 2023.
I agree.
Like you say, we've evolved so much, but still part of society just doesn't accept that there's people out there that don't feel comfortable sometimes in their own clothes or in their own bodies or whatever it is. And for people not to be able to accept that, it just shouldn't exist. We should be educating in such a way, I think, as a society that there are people out there that don't feel comfortable in their own clothes or in their own, and that's fine. It's fine. It doesn't make them any less or any different from the rest of us.
I feel incredibly grateful and almost honoured that being part of this hobby has allowed me to get to know so many diverse people that you wouldn't normally communicate with in day-to-day life. And I feel like my life is so much more enriched because I've met tea-girls, because I've met transgender, because, I've met...
And it's in such a way as well that if you, for instance, had let's just say, for instance, we were sitting amongst 5 or 6 tea-girls in McDonald's, you wouldn't be having the conversations with them or asking them the questions that we were able to ask in a swinging club.
Yeah.
because it's such an open environment. And then in the middle of it, somebody walks down into the room with a butt plug in.
It had a beautiful tail on the end of it.
And this guy just suddenly went, oh, there's not much happening upstairs, a few blowjobs, and that's about it. And then the conversation went back to stockings and where you could buy stockings. And it's just this mad, surreal world where everyone's just open, and it is addictive. And then, you go back into the real world and you meet people that are so repressed.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about that some in our group session, and that it is, you hear sometimes a vanilla couple will say, hey, we tried a toy last night. and you think to yourself, so, okay, I mean, and bravo. I mean, I support that completely. Yeah. So on the one hand, you're like, that's fantastic. How was it? And on the other hand, you're like, okay.
That's nothing.
But it sometimes it takes those moments for me personally to realize, because it happened sort of without us paying attention, how far we have wandered off the middle of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny when you're hanging out with your friend, your good friends that your vanilla friends that don't know anything about this. And, you're kind of drinking and having a good time. And they're like, oh, where's the craziest place you guys have had sex? And I'm like, I can't say it. I
can't tell you that.
I have to have a vanilla answer.
So Mrs. Sno, the thing you should reply with is, okay, your toy has batteries, mine has a pulse.
Ooh.
Or multiple pulses. Do you know, I have to share this with you. Do you know what she said before we went over to the party? I said to her, I said, hey, speaking of confidence, and all these things, I said, hey, if you see somebody that you're interested in, I'll be your wingman. I'll go over and say something.
So graciously offering to be my wingman.
Yeah, I'll help you out. Like, I'm on team Mrs. Sno here. And she looks at me and she gets this smile on her face and she says, honey, I don't need a wingman. I need an audience.
I love it.
That's mic drop.
Mrs. Sno, if you were here right now, I would be high-fiving you.
I was so proud of her in that moment. I didn't know what to do with myself.
He's created a monster. He calls me a brat.
That's the thing, isn't it?
But it's like, well, you've done this. So.
But the weird thing is that I'm sure, Mr. Sno, I'm sure you will echo this. We feel like we are married to like the ultimate woman because the sexual confidence.
Oh, so much.
And this is the thing. And it's like, people think it's like like we said before, where you get the muggle world, think that perhaps one partner wants to go off and fuck other people. But the thing is, it's like, no, we're married to the ultimate woman.
Oh, absolutely. I have always been wildly attracted to my wife, but through the hobby, I have learned to know this woman who is confident and she is empowered and she is beautiful and she's kind and she is sexy and she is uninhibited. She is purely, openly herself. And there's nothing more beautiful than that.
Touche. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love it.
Me and Mrs. Sno are sitting there going,
no, I'm just sitting here kind of beaming.
Yeah, you're giggling. I can hear you giggling. But because you don't believe it, we could say it a million times, but I know, the ladies never really believe it. And it's so true.
We've talked about having just a podcast with me and a friend of ours that we have a couple that we're pretty good friends with. And Mr. Sno really wants just to have a conversation with the ladies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, Mrs. N and I need to have.
We do.
I agree with that. That would be fantastic.
That would be so fun.
I would definitely be sitting there with the tissues if you did that.
For which part of you?
If we don't make eye contact, I'll sit next to you.
Oh, brilliant.
Roll on February. That's all right.
Oh, I know. So February is coming up, and I think we're gonna come out there. I'm pretty excited. And
if you guys came over, you would be
imagine?
You would be like VVIPs. VVIPs. We'll get
VVIPs.
Yes.
Do you remember like David and Victoria Beckham? Forget their thrones. And
We've got Mr. and Mrs Sno.
Oh my goodness.
We'll get you like the best thrones there is for Mr. and Mrs Sno.
If we can get you to Liberty Elite, honestly, the VIP bed has got your name on it.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
wow.
There's a bed. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll make sure our trip definitely goes over a Friday and a Saturday.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And we're going to be probably so tired on Sunday.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
All we need now is either Spotify or iTunes to just sanction a 4-way show for us all, like permanently.
Oh my God, how amazing would that be?
Because they do these crossover shows all the time.
That would be a lot of fun.
You know, they do wife swap and all those kind of things, don't they? And we could do this like swingers swap kind of thing where we all get together and
It's pod swapping.
Yeah, this is good.
I'm loving it.
You guys are so cool.
You are amazing. And I'm so glad that we've managed to get you. We've been able to coordinate, so we've been able to get you guys on our podcast.
Yeah.
Because
we appreciate the
we
invite.
know-
Yeah,
We
thank
just
you
love
so much.
we know we have a lot of followers.
This is a
that
big deal
love
for us.
you guys, so they're going to be stoked when they realise that this week's podcast has got you two on it.
So I'd just like to say to our listeners, Mr. and Mrs. Sno are in our Discord room. They're in there a lot. You can chat to them. So get on our Discord. Listen to their podcast. If you don't listen to their podcast, you are missing just the best thing. It's called Scheduling Sin with SnoMilf. And you're on iTunes and Spotify, aren't you? Yeah, but they're the big ones over here. So iTunes, Spotify, you've got to listen to them. They are filthy and just fantastic.
So guys, just as a question, because if we've got listeners that would like to maybe ask you questions or send you a message, is there a particular avenue that they can message you on?
Yeah, there's two different ways. So email always works. It's SnoMilf, SNOMILF @yahoo.com. Or we have a Discord server as well.
Excellent.
And the link to that is in the show notes of our podcast too. But people are welcome to reach out to us in our Discord or yours. We're happy to talk to people.
Why are we in your Discord? We were joining.
Hang on a minute. What's going on?
I'm getting my phone. I didn't even...
Well, I tell you what, when Tina Von Teese joined our Discord, you should have. Mr. Sno came home like an excited schoolgirl. He was like, "Guess who's in our Discord?"
Okay,
he was so excited. He was like smitten with just fan, like a fangirl.
I
total
I don't know whether
starstruck.
she's put them on there, but I have to do a shout out to Tina because she did a Halloween photo shoot, and she
did. She
We
shared
saw
some of those
those.
photos. They were
did you
amazing.
see? I was going to say if she hadn't shown you need to see them because they are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are
Yeah.
fantastic. No, I was very excited. And honestly, the only reason I haven't invited you to is I'm kind of shy.
Yeah, Pinocchio.
You laugh, but that's sort of true. You guys are a big deal. This is really a big deal because honestly, your podcast has been very influential for us.
Yes.
And so to be honored to be here with you guys for us that's a really big deal.
Honestly.
We honestly feel we've got kindred spirits with you two.
Yeah, totally.
We really do.
Just promises that we'll do more of these and
Yes.
share as we carry on along the journey. Both of us as couples, that we share more sort of experiences together and just carry on doing this because this is what life is all about.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll do this anytime you want.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so I'll definitely keep you posted about February.
Good.
And, if we come over there, then the next trip is you guys have to come over here.
I'm just
I'm there.
I'm just having a little moment.
If we just leave food out, the kids will be okay, won't they? I mean,
It's fine.
Like, what's the worst that could happen?
like if we just leave granola bars all over the house, it's like we'll tell them it's an Easter egg hunt for like 4 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know this is really, really weird and a little bit spooky? I have a reoccurring dream that my family are going to America. And I've been having this dream for months and months and months. I haven't had it for quite a while. And then last night I had the dream again.
Was I wearing pants?
Wow.
Yeah.
Was I wearing pants?
And I'm wondering whether I'm having a bit of a premonition
Could be.
that is the dream that's saying that we are going to go and visit Mr. and Mrs. Snow.
Well,
We would love
How
that.
awesome would that be?
Just so
so
you know, I
much
think
fun.
the TSA does want you to wear pants. Mr.
Wait a minute. Did you just say I want him to wear pants?
No, I said I think the TSA wants him to wear pants.
Well, yeah, but they're no fun.
Yeah, I get it.
actually, we need to liven them up a little bit.
Oh,
Clearly.
just get past those folks, and then we'll have a no pants party for as long
That's
as you want.
so cool. I can wear my kilt. I've got a kilt now.
Oh, there
You
you
know,
go.
I've been thinking about getting a kilt.
Oh, my
don't
gosh.
encourage him. He absolutely
And you
loves
have to wear it. You have to wear it
Oh,
correctly.
I
He
did.
did.
I
He did.
Yes.
You just want your balls to
Yeah.
be out.
I can assure you there is nothing much more fun. So it was a fancy dress. It was we have Roxy, of course, that you know on our show, and Roxy
Yeah.
was holding a Rocktober party. So I was a little bit worried. A lot of people were going as Rocky Horror, you know.
Oh,
So
right, sure.
I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I went as Axl Rose, bought myself a kilt.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
went as Axl Rose.
Is there a picture of you on Discord in the kilt?
If you walk into a swingers club in a kilt, everybody's going to feel your balls.
Do you know what the funniest thing was? Is even though he was dressed as Axl Rose with the long wig and everything else, God, was he horny that night? I was literally, I could not get my hands off of him. I said, "You have got to wear this kilt more often."
Yeah. The weird thing, I've not got Axl Rose's physique, so I was Axl Rose in the 90s, probably late 20s. You know, the burger years.
The burger.
Axl Rose in the burger years. That was definitely me.
Well, obviously, Mrs. N prefers the burger
Yeah,
years.
oh, I do. You've got to have something to hold on to, haven't you?
I agree.
Amen.
Oh, bless you guys. I can't thank you enough for coming
We're
on.
aware of how much time we've taken up with you, and I know you've got normal things to do. Thank you so much for today. It's just so amazing.
It has. It's meant the world to us. It really has.
Well, thank you. We love talking to you guys, and it's always we feel very just honored and just excited to be a part of your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And we shall definitely see you again on the podcast. Definitely.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to February.
Brilliant.
So is Mr. Sno.
Yes.
Now I have to go kilt shopping.
Yeah.
Clearly. Yeah.
That's it.
That's what
when you
need.
come over in February, you have to be wearing the kilt, and I'll make sure Mr. N's got his on as well when you're meeting each other.
That's awesome.
I
We
like
can
it.
do that. We can do that.
And then myself and Mrs. Snow can actually test to make sure you are wearing them correctly.
Yes. And I will give you permission, Mrs. N.
Thank
You can feel Mr. Snow's
you.
balls.
I need the tissues again. There.
I love that. I love consent by association.
Well, thanks, guys. We
You
appreciate it.
take care. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, I do.
And we'll speak again really, really soon.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.
Bye.